Welcome to the channel. I know many of you listen to these videos to relax or fall asleep, and I'm really glad you're here. Before we start today's crime stories, please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. And if there's any crime story you'd like me to narrate for you, feel free to request it in the comments section. Now let's begin. Story 1. Adam Peter Lanza was born on April 22, 1992, in Kingston, New Hampshire. He lived with his parents, Peter and Nancy Lanza. He had an older brother named Ryan. When Adam was a young child, his family moved to the town of Newtown, Connecticut. From a very early age, Adam was different from other children. Before he was 3 years old, his parents noticed he had problems. He did not communicate like other children. He had trouble with sounds and textures, which is called a sensory processing disorder. He also did not play with others in a typical way and repeated certain behaviors. Because of these difficulties, he was enrolled in a special state program for infants and toddlers who need help. In elementary school, Adam attended Sandy Hook Elementary. His sensory problems made school hard for him. Loud noises and busy classrooms caused him great anxiety. He was very intelligent, but he struggled to connect with other students. He often seemed to be in his own world. He did not make friends easily. When Adam was in middle school, his problems became worse. The routine of changing classrooms many times a day was too much for him. The movement and noise caused him extreme stress. His anxiety grew so bad that his mother once took him to a hospital emergency room. Because the large public school was too stressful, Nancy Lanza moved him to a smaller private school for a short time. At the age of 13, a doctor diagnosed Adam with Asperger's syndrome, which is a condition on the autism spectrum. A year later, his parents took him to specialists at Yale University. Those doctors also said he had obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD. This meant he had repeated, unwanted thoughts and felt the need to do certain actions over and over. For example, he would change his socks many times a day and could not touch doorknobs with his bare hands. The Yale doctors recommended strong support for him, including therapy and possibly medicine. Adam tried one antidepressant medicine, but he had a very bad reaction to it after only 3 days. He became dizzy, disoriented, and sweaty. He stopped taking the medicine and never tried another kind. After 2006, he did not see any mental health doctors again. Adam went to Newtown High School. He was smart enough to be on the honor roll, but he almost never went to class. His anxiety was too severe. He was mostly taught at home by his mother and father. He also took some college classes. He officially graduated from high school through a mix of home tutoring and those college courses. As he grew older, Adam became more isolated. He had no friends. He cut off contact with his father and his brother. He lived alone in the house with his mother, but he often communicated with her only by email, even though they were in the same home. He spent nearly all his time in his bedroom or the basement. He covered his bedroom windows with black garbage bags to block out all light. His main activities were playing video games on the computer, often for many hours at a time. He was very focused on certain games, including non-violent ones like Dance Dance Revolution, which he would play for hours in a frenzy. He also spent a large amount of time on the internet. He developed a deep interest in studying mass shootings, particularly the 1999 Columbine High School attack. He collected information and news articles about these events. In the last year of his life, Adam's health was poor. He was very thin because he hardly ate. He was 6 feet tall but weighed only 112 pounds. He lived in almost total isolation, with his online activities as his only connection to the outside world. His mother owned several firearms and had taught both of her sons how to shoot at a local gun range years before. She kept her guns in the house where they lived. On the morning of December 14th, 2012, Adam Lanza was in the Newtown home he shared with his mother, Nancy. Sometime before 9:30 a.m., he took a .22 caliber rifle that belonged to his mother. He went to her bedroom, where she was still in her pajamas. He shot her in the head 4 times while she was in bed. He then left her body there. He had already prepared other weapons. He took 3 of his mother's firearms, a Bushmaster XM15 E2S semi-automatic rifle, a 10mm Glock handgun, and a 9mm SIG Sauer handgun. He also took many magazines, which are containers for bullets, for the rifle. He loaded these magazines with many rounds of ammunition. He put on black clothing, earplugs, and an olive green vest with many pockets. He took the keys to his mother's car, a black Honda Civic. He drove the car to Sandy Hook Elementary School, which was about 5 miles away. He arrived at the school around 9:35 a.m. The school's front doors were locked, as was the security procedure every morning. Adam Lanza did not try to enter through the main doors. Instead, he used the rifle to shoot several times at a large glass panel next to the entrance. The glass broke. He then walked through the broken window frame to get inside the school. The first people he saw were the school principal, Dawn Hochsprung, the school psychologist, Mary Sherlack, and a teacher named Natalie Hammond. They had been in a meeting and came out into the hallway after hearing the loud noises. They saw Lanza with the rifle. Principal Hochsprung and Ms. Sherlack moved toward him. Lanza raised the rifle and shot them both. They died in the hallway. He also shot teacher Natalie Hammond, wounding her in the leg. She fell down but later crawled away to safety. After shooting them, Lanza walked down the hallway. He passed the main office. He looked into the office but did not see the school nurse and secretary hiding under desks. He turned around and went back into the hallway. He was looking for classrooms. The first classroom he entered was room 8, a first-grade classroom. The teacher, Lauren Rousseau, had gathered her 15 students and tried to hide them in a small bathroom at the back of the room. Lanza forced his way into the classroom. He shot and killed Lauren Rousseau. He also shot and killed a behavioral therapist named Rachel Davino, who was in the room helping a student. Then he shot all 14 of the first-grade students who were hiding in the bathroom. One child was badly wounded, but was still alive when help arrived later. That child died at the hospital. Only one little girl in that classroom survived by hiding in a corner and staying very still. Lanza then went to another first-grade classroom nearby, room 10. The teacher there was Victoria Soto. She had hidden some children in a closet. Other children were hiding under desks or in another corner. When Lanza entered, he began shooting. Teacher Victoria Soto was shot and killed. A special education teacher named Marie Murphy was also shot and killed. She was found lying over a student, trying to protect him. 6 of the children in this classroom were killed. Several other children managed to run out of the classroom during the shooting. One brave boy, Jesse Lewis, shouted "Run!" to his classmates before he was shot. During this time, other people in the school heard the gunshots. A teacher named Caitlin Roig hurried 14 students into a small bathroom in her classroom and locked the door. She told them to be completely silent. Librarians hid 18 children in a storage room and pushed a filing cabinet against the door. A janitor ran through the halls, banging on classroom doors to warn teachers to lock down. Many teachers locked their classroom doors, turned off the lights, and moved their students to hidden corners. Adam Lanza did not try to break into any of these locked classrooms. He stayed in the hallway and the 2 first-grade classrooms he had entered. In less than 5 minutes, he fired 154 shots from the rifle. He also fired 2 shots from the Glock handgun. At approximately 9:40 a.m., inside classroom 10, he put the Glock handgun to the back of his own head and fired. This final shot killed him instantly. When the shooting stopped, there was silence. 20 children and 6 adults inside the school were dead. 2 adults had been wounded but survived. The entire attack, from the first shot to the last, took less than 5 minutes. The first call to the police, 911, came from inside the school at 9:35 a.m. A school secretary had hidden and called for help. Police officers from the Newtown Police Department arrived at the school street by 9:39 a.m. They could hear no more gunshots. The officers entered the school building through the broken front window at about 9:44 a.m. They moved slowly down the hallways, looking for the shooter and for victims. They found the bodies of the principal and psychologist in the hall. They heard noises from classrooms and realized people were hiding inside locked rooms. The officers began shouting to announce that the police were there and to tell people to come out with their hands up. The police officers found the door to classroom 10 open. Inside, they saw the body of Adam Lanza on the floor. They saw the rifle and handguns nearby. They also saw the victims in that room and in classroom 8. The officers checked Lanza's body to confirm he was dead. They then began a careful search of the entire school to make sure there were no other shooters. They escorted the hidden children and teachers out of the building, one room at a time. The survivors were taken to a nearby firehouse where families were waiting. At the same time, other police officers went to the Lanza home after learning the car at the school was registered to Nancy Lanza. They entered the house and found her body in the master bedroom. This confirmed that the crime had started there. The investigation was led by the Connecticut State Police. They collected all the evidence. At the school, they found that Lanza had fired 156 total shots. He had used the rifle for most of them. He carried many magazines, some of which were taped together for faster reloading. He had more unused ammunition in his pockets. In his car, parked outside the school, police found another firearm, a shotgun, that he did not use. At Lanza's home, investigators found a large number of items. There was a gun safe containing more firearms and over 1,400 rounds of ammunition. They found books, articles, and printed materials about other mass shootings, especially the Columbine shooting. They found 3 samurai swords. They also found a computer from which the hard drive had been removed and smashed. Lanza had destroyed it before the attack. Technicians tried to recover data from it, but were not successful. However, on another computer storage device, they found videos and documents related to mass murders. They found that Lanza had kept detailed records about other shooters. The medical examiner performed autopsies on all the victims. The report stated that the children and adults were killed by the rifle shots. The force of the bullets was devastating. The examiner also performed an autopsy on Adam Lanza. They found no alcohol or drugs in his system. They found no physical brain tumors or abnormalities. The police investigation concluded that Adam Lanza acted alone. He had planned the attack. He chose the school, but a clear reason why was never found. The official report stated that his severe mental health problems, isolation, and obsession with violence contributed to his actions. However, no specific note or message explaining his motive was ever discovered. In the years that followed, there were several legal cases related to the shooting. The families of 9 victims sued the company that made the rifle, Remington Arms. They argued the company marketed a military-style weapon to civilians in an irresponsible way. After many years in court, in 2022, Remington agreed to a settlement of $73 million to the families. Another set of lawsuits involved a media personality named Alex Jones. He had spread false claims that the shooting was a hoax and that the families were actors. Several families sued him for defamation. In court, he was ordered to pay very large sums of money to these families for the harm he caused. The lawsuits bankrupted his business. The town of Newtown decided to tear down the original Sandy Hook Elementary School. A new school was built on the same land with a design focused on safety and healing. It opened in 2016. The house where Adam and Nancy Lanza lived was also torn down by the town. The land was left as open space. The community created a permanent memorial for the victims. It features a stone basin with the names of the 26 victims engraved on it and a sycamore tree in the center. It opened in November 2022. The story of Sandy Hook left a permanent mark on the town, the families, and the nation's discussion about school safety, guns, and mental health. The tragedy was a result of a deeply troubled individual using easily accessible weapons to carry out an unthinkable act of violence. Story 2. Nicholas Cruz was born on September 24, 1998, in Margate, Florida. His biological mother gave him up for adoption shortly after his birth. He was adopted by a couple named Roger and Linda Cruz. He never knew his biological father. His childhood was marked by significant loss. His adoptive father, Roger Cruz, died of a heart attack in 2004 when Nicholas was only 6 years old. This left him to be raised solely by his adoptive mother, Linda. Linda Cruz was older and had health problems, but she tried to care for him. Then, in November 2017, when Nicholas was 19, Linda also died from pneumonia. This meant Nicholas was completely alone, with no parents, just 3 months before he would commit a terrible crime. From a very early age, Nicholas had serious problems with his behavior. Even in preschool, teachers noted he was difficult to manage. As he grew older, these issues became worse. He was diagnosed with several conditions, including attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, and oppositional defiant disorder, ODD. This made him easily frustrated, angry, and prone to arguing with and defying authority figures. Because of these behavioral problems, his school life was unstable. He was moved between 6 different schools in 3 years. One of these schools was Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. In 2014, because he needed more help, he was transferred to a special school for students with emotional or learning disabilities. There were reports that he made threats against other students during this time. He returned to Stoneman Douglas High School 2 years later, but was eventually expelled in 2017 for fighting and other rules he broke. The school administration had warned teachers about him and did not allow him to carry a backpack on campus. Nicholas had an interest in the military. He joined the Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps, JROTC, at school and received some awards for good grades in the program. He was also on his school's varsity air rifle team, which meant he learned how to shoot target rifles. After his mother died, Nicholas had no stable home. He lived for short periods with different family friends and a family he found through an online ad. He was legally an adult, so no official guardian was appointed. He enrolled in a program to get his GED, which is an alternative to a high school diploma, and he got a job at a Dollar Tree store. For many years, various people tried to get Nicholas mental health help. Starting in 2013, psychiatrists recommended he be placed in a residential treatment facility. In September 2016, the Florida Department of Children and Families investigated him because he posted videos on Snapchat where he cut his arms and talked about buying a gun. A school resource officer and 2 guidance counselors thought he should be forced into a mental health examination under a law called the Baker Act. However, a mental health facility decided not to take him. State investigators concluded he was at a low risk of hurting himself or others, even though their notes said he had depression, autism, and ADHD, and had tried to kill himself before. Nicholas spent a lot of time online, and his internet activity was disturbing. On social media and YouTube, he posted pictures of himself with knives and guns. He used racist and hateful language against black people, Jewish people, and Muslims. He left comments on videos saying he wanted to kill people and die fighting. He researched other mass shooters and read about their crimes online. People who knew him said he often joked about guns and violence. A neighbor said his mother would sometimes call the police to their house to try to calm him down. Law enforcement and the FBI received many warnings about him over the years. From 2008 to 2017, police were called to his home or about him at least 45 times. In 2016, someone sent an anonymous tip saying Cruz had threatened to shoot up a school. In 2017, another tip called him a potential school shooter in the making. In September 2017, a comment from an account with his name appeared on a YouTube video saying, "I'm going to be a professional school shooter." The person who saw it reported it to the FBI, but agents could not find who made the comment. In January 2018, a person close to Cruz called the FBI tip line with detailed concerns about his guns, his desire to kill people, and his social media posts. This information was not forwarded to the correct FBI office to investigate. In February 2017, shortly after turning 18, Nicholas Cruz legally bought an AR-15 style rifle from a gun store in Coral Springs, Florida. He passed the required background check. Florida law at the time allowed 18-year-olds to buy such rifles. He also owned other firearms. By February 2018, Nicholas Cruz was 19 years old. He was a young man with a history of severe emotional and behavioral problems, significant childhood trauma, and many missed opportunities for intervention. He lived without a permanent home, had access to powerful firearms, and had expressed violent fantasies for years without being stopped. On February 14, 2018, Nicholas Cruz woke up in the small room he was renting in a house. He had planned for this day. He had previously purchased an AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle and multiple magazines, which are containers that hold bullets. He had also bought a large amount of ammunition. That morning, he packed his rifle and magazines into a black duffel bag. He put on a maroon polo shirt, similar to the color students at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School sometimes wore. He then called for an Uber ride. He needed a way to get to the school, as he no longer had a car. When the Uber driver arrived, Cruz placed his duffel bag in the car and got in. He told the driver he was going to the school. The driver noticed nothing unusual about him during the short trip. The Uber car arrived at the school around 2:10 p.m. Classes were still in session. Cruz got out, took his duffel bag, and walked toward the 3-story building known as the Freshman Building. He entered through a door on the ground floor. He knew the layout of this building well from his time as a student there. To prepare, he had previously walked through the school during a fire drill to remember the hallways. Once inside, he went to a first-floor stairwell. This was a place where students were not allowed to be during class time. He took his rifle out of the bag and loaded it. He also put on hearing protection like earmuffs, because the gunshots would be very loud. He then began shooting. His first shots were through the windows of a classroom door, wounding 2 students. He then walked down the hallway on the first floor, firing into classrooms. He aimed through the small windows in the classroom doors or shot at the doors themselves. He moved methodically from one classroom to the next. During this time, the fire alarm in the building went off. This was because the smoke from his gunshots had triggered it. Many students and teachers, thinking it was a routine fire drill, began to leave their classrooms and enter the hallways. This unfortunately put more people directly in his path. Cruz then proceeded to the second floor. He continued firing into classrooms and down the hallways. He would pause to reload his weapon when a magazine was empty. He had brought many loaded magazines with him. The entire attack inside the building lasted approximately 6 minutes. After firing many rounds, he decided to leave. He put his rifle down on the floor of the hallway. He then ran down the stairs, exited the building, and blended in with the crowds of students who were fleeing. He walked quickly away from the school grounds, mixing in with other panicked students so he would not stand out. He walked for several blocks until he reached a Walmart store. He went inside and bought a soda from a Subway restaurant inside the store. He then left and walked to a nearby McDonald's. He sat there for a short time. After that, he continued walking through the neighborhood. Meanwhile, police had arrived at the school. They found the scene of the shooting with many victims. They began searching for the shooter based on descriptions from witnesses. About an hour and 20 minutes after the shooting began, a police officer in the city of Coral Springs, which is next to Parkland, saw a young man walking who matched the description. The officer stopped him. The young man was Nicholas Cruz. He did not fight or resist. He was taken into custody without incident. At the police station, Cruz was questioned. He confessed to being the shooter. He told the police he was the one who carried out the attack. He explained that he brought the rifle and extra magazines to the school in a bag. He said he chose Valentine's Day because he thought no one loved him. The result of his actions was that 17 people inside the school were killed. They were students and staff members. 17 other people were injured by gunfire, some very seriously. The school and the community were left in a state of shock and grief. After Nicholas Cruz was arrested, the police immediately began a large investigation. They collected the rifle he had left in the school hallway. They searched his phone and his online activity. They found many searches and posts about violence and other shooters. They also interviewed many witnesses, including students, teachers, and the Uber driver who took him to the school. The next day, Cruz was taken to court for his first hearing. He was officially charged with 17 counts of premeditated murder, one for each person killed. The judge ordered that he be held in jail without the possibility of paying to get out. He was placed in a special cell where he could be watched all the time because they were worried he might try to hurt himself. In March 2018, a grand jury, which is a group of citizens who review evidence, added more charges. He was now also charged with 17 counts of attempted murder for the people who were injured. The prosecutors announced they would seek the death penalty as punishment. Cruz's public defenders offered to have him plead guilty if the death penalty was taken off the table, but the prosecution refused. The legal process was very slow. Cruz had to be evaluated by doctors to understand his mental state. There were also arguments about whether his confession to the police could be used in court. The judge ruled that the videos of his confession could be made public. In the videos, he is seen crying and saying "kill me" to the camera. His behavior in jail caused problems. In November 2018, he got into a fight with a jail officer. He was accused of hitting the officer and trying to take the officer's stun gun. Because of this, he faced new criminal charges for attacking an officer. He was moved to solitary confinement for a time. The case was delayed for a long time. One reason was the COVID-19 pandemic, which closed courts. Another reason was the huge amount of evidence the lawyers had to review. The defense team was also trying to build a case to save him from the death penalty. They planned to argue that his birth mother's drug and alcohol use while pregnant had damaged his brain. Finally, in October 2021, Cruz appeared in court again. He changed his plea from not guilty to guilty for all 34 charges, the 17 murders and the 17 attempted murders. He stood up in court and said he was sorry for what he did. He told the families of the victims that he wanted them to decide what should happen to him. However, because the prosecution still wanted the death penalty, a trial was needed to decide his sentence. This is called a penalty phase trial. This penalty trial began in July 2022. The prosecution showed the jury graphic evidence from the school and played security videos of the shooting. They showed his violent internet searches, which included phrases like, "how to become a school shooter." They called family members of the victims to testify about their pain and loss. The defense lawyers did not argue that he was innocent. Instead, they tried to show reasons why he should not be executed. They called doctors who said he had fetal alcohol spectrum disorder because his birth mother drank while pregnant. They said this affected his brain and his ability to make good decisions. They talked about his troubled childhood and the death of his parents. The prosecution argued back with their own doctors. One doctor said Cruz had antisocial personality disorder and was simply a violent person who knew what he was doing was wrong. They said he planned the attack carefully and chose to do it. After hearing all the evidence, the jury had to decide whether to recommend the death penalty or life in prison. In Florida, for a death penalty recommendation, the jury must be unanimous, meaning all 12 jurors must agree. In October 2022, the jury announced their decision. They could not all agree. Some jurors voted for the death penalty, but at least one did not. Therefore, their official recommendation was life in prison without parole. Many family members of the victims were very angry and upset with this result. They spoke in court and said Cruz deserved to die for what he did. In November 2022, the judge formally sentenced Nicholas Cruz. She followed the jury's recommendation and gave him the maximum sentence possible, life in prison without the possibility of ever being released. She gave him a separate life sentence for each of the 34 victims, to be served one after the other. After the criminal case was over, there were civil lawsuits. In 2024, Cruz settled a lawsuit with one of the wounded survivors, Anthony Borges. As part of the settlement, Cruz gave Borges the rights to his name and life story. This means Cruz cannot sell his story for movies or books, and any money from such deals would go to Borges. Cruz also agreed that when he dies, his brain will be donated to science for study. Nicholas Cruz was sent to a maximum security prison in Florida, where he will spend the rest of his life. The school building where the shooting happened was eventually torn down. The community and the victims' families worked to change laws, leading to new gun safety legislation in Florida and increased focus on school security. The story of the crime ended with the perpetrator permanently imprisoned and a community forever changed by loss. Story 3. Omar Mateen was born in New York in 1986. His parents had moved to the United States from Afghanistan. The family practiced the Muslim religion. When Omar was about 5 years old, they moved to Port St. Lucie, Florida. His school years were difficult. From a very young age, teachers wrote about his behavior. In elementary school, a report said he was constantly moving and could not sit still. The report said he was verbally abusive and rude. It noted he talked too much about violence and sex. He had trouble keeping his hands to himself and would touch other children. These problems continued in middle school. To avoid conflicts with other students, he was sometimes placed in a separate class. A teacher sent a letter home to his father. The letter said Omar had a bad attitude and could not control himself. Some classmates said he was a bully. They said he was disrespectful to girls. Other classmates said he was bullied himself for being overweight and for his Afghan background. When he was 14 and in high school, he got into a fight in a math class. He was arrested because of this fight. The charges were later dropped, but he was expelled from that school. He was sent to an alternative school for students with behavior issues. After the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001, he made statements that shocked other students. He said he supported the hijackers. He claimed that Osama bin Laden was his uncle. When his father came to the school because of this, his father slapped him in front of others. He eventually finished high school through an adult education program. Records show he had been suspended from school many days for fighting and hurting other students. After high school, he went to a community college. He studied criminal justice. As part of a questionnaire, he wrote that he had been involved in a crime that was never discovered. He did not give details. He earned a 2-year degree in 2006. He got a job as a recruit for the state prison system. During training, after a famous school shooting happened in another state, he asked if he could bring a gun to class. His superiors found this question disturbing. He was dismissed from the training program soon after. In 2007, he got a job with a large security company named G4S. He worked as a security guard. To work as an armed guard, he had to pass a psychological test. The test was a standard written exam. The paperwork listed a psychologist who did not actually evaluate him. The company later called this a clerical error. The test results were reviewed by a different doctor who cleared him. While working at a courthouse, he threatened co-workers. He said he would have a terrorist group kill a deputy's family. Because of these threats, the security company moved him to a different job. They placed him at the entrance gate of a residential community. The company did not tell the community why he had been moved. In his personal life, he married a woman he met online in 2009. They separated after only 4 months and divorced in 2011. He married a second wife, Noor Salman, in 2011. They had a son together. By the end of 2015, she had moved out to live with her relatives in California. At the time, he was living in Florida. People who knew him gave different descriptions of him. His first wife said he was mentally unstable and beat her. A co-worker at the gated community said he made hateful comments about gay people, different races, and women. This co-worker said he talked about killing people. Other residents of the community described him as polite and nice. He went to a mosque regularly. The leader of the mosque said he was quiet and gave no sign of violence. In the months leading up to the attack, Omar Mateen began to plan. He started by getting his finances in order. 2 months before, he signed over his share of a house to his sister for only $10. This meant he had less property in his name. Next, he needed weapons. In the weeks before the attack, he went to a licensed gun store in Florida. He legally bought a semi-automatic rifle and a semi-automatic handgun. He also shopped for other equipment. He tried to buy body armor from one store, but they did not sell the type he wanted. At a different store, he tried to buy a large amount of ammunition. The store employees became suspicious of his behavior and refused to sell it to him. He left the store. He also visited the location he had chosen for his attack. The location was a nightclub in Orlando named Pulse. This nightclub was popular with the LGBT community. In the week before the attack, he went to the Orlando area with his wife and son. During this trip, he visited the Pulse nightclub. He also went to the Disney Springs shopping area. His wife later told authorities that during this trip, he made her drive him past the Pulse nightclub so he could look at it. On the day before the attack, he was at his parents' house. He visited his father. His father did not notice anything unusual about his behavior. Later that day, he gave his wife $1,000 in cash. He told her to use it to travel to California to visit her family. She left Florida. Very early on the morning of June 12, 2016, he left his apartment. He drove from Fort Pierce to Orlando, a drive of about 2 hours. He had his newly purchased rifle and handgun with him. He also had many magazines loaded with ammunition. He arrived at the Pulse nightclub around 2 a.m. The club was still busy with people dancing and talking. He entered the club with his rifle. He immediately started shooting at the people inside. The first shots caused panic. People ran, fell, and tried to hide. He moved further into the club, continuing to shoot. Within minutes, police officers arrived at the club after receiving emergency calls. They exchanged gunfire with him. He then moved deeper into the building, into a hallway and bathroom area where people were hiding. He trapped many victims there with him. This area became a hostage situation. While he was trapped in the bathroom area with the hostages, he made phone calls. He called the local police emergency number. During this call, he said he pledged his loyalty to the Islamic State terrorist group. He said his attack was because of U.S. military actions in other countries. He also mentioned the names of other terrorists from past attacks. He made several other calls, including one to a local television news station. He told them he was the shooter and repeated his loyalty to the Islamic State. For the next 3 hours, he remained in the club with the hostages. Police negotiators tried to talk to him on the phone. During this time, some victims inside were injured and dying from their wounds. Police worked to formulate a plan to rescue them. Just after 5 a.m., police decided to break through an exterior wall of the club with an armored vehicle. The loud explosion and breach distracted him. When he came out of the bathroom area toward the breach, police officers shot and killed him. The shooting was over. When police entered and cleared the building, they found 49 people dead from gunshot wounds. 53 other people were injured, some very critically. The club was filled with blood, spent bullet casings, and debris. It was the deadliest mass shooting in the United States at that time. The investigation began instantly as the shooting ended. Police and federal agents, including the FBI, secured the scene. They identified the shooter as Omar Mateen, using his driver's license found in his vehicle. Because he had mentioned the Islamic State in his 911 calls, the FBI's counterterrorism teams took charge of the investigation. The first step was to understand his actions and motivations. Agents recovered his cell phones and computers. They examined his internet searches and social media activity. They found that in the hours before the attack, he had searched for news about the Islamic State and for the address of the Pulse nightclub. He had also posted messages on Facebook pledging support for the terrorist group and warning of attacks in the USA. These posts were taken down after the FBI discovered them. Agents interviewed hundreds of people. They talked to his family, his former wives, his co-workers, and people at his mosque. They wanted to know if anyone had helped him or knew about his plans beforehand. His second wife, Noor Salman, was a key person of interest. She was in California when the attack happened. FBI agents interviewed her there. She said she knew her husband had watched jihadist videos online, but she did not think it was serious because the FBI had interviewed him before and done nothing. She said she did not know about his specific plan to attack the nightclub. However, the physical evidence and witness statements created a timeline. Security footage from the gun store showed him buying the weapons. Cell phone location data confirmed he had visited the nightclub and Disney Springs in the days before the attack. His financial records showed he had given his wife cash before she left. Based on this, authorities arrested Noor Salman in January 2017. She was charged with aiding her husband and obstructing the investigation. The investigation also looked into how he obtained his firearms license. The state of Florida fined his employer, the security company G4S, over $150,000. The fine was for using incorrect paperwork from a psychologist who had not actually evaluated him for his armed guard license. The legal process for Noor Salman moved to a trial. Her defense lawyers argued she was an abused wife who feared her husband and did not know his plans. The prosecution argued she knew he was radicalized and knew he was going to do something violent, even if she didn't know the exact target. In March 2018, a jury found her not guilty on all charges. The jury did not believe the government had proven she knowingly helped. For the victims and their families, the path was longer. An official report from the FBI and local police was completed, detailing the response and the shooter's actions. Many victims faced huge medical bills from their injuries. Some survivors and families of those killed filed lawsuits against the security company G4S, alleging negligence in their employee screening. They also filed lawsuits against the gun store that sold him the weapons. These civil cases were settled out of court for undisclosed amounts of money. The city of Orlando and the LGBT community held memorials and vigils. A permanent memorial was planned for the site of the nightclub. The United States government officially classified the attack as an act of domestic terrorism. Omar Mateen's body was claimed by his family. He was buried in a Muslim cemetery in South Florida. No one else was ever criminally charged for directly helping him carry out the attack. The story of the Pulse nightclub shooting ended with a community healing, a wife acquitted, and no further answers about why one man chose to commit an act of violence that affected hundreds of lives forever. Story 4. Sung-Hui Cho was born on January 18, 1984, in Asan, South Korea. His family was not wealthy. His father owned a small bookstore that did not make much money. When Cho was 8 years old, in 1992, his parents decided to move the family to the United States. They wanted better opportunities and education for Cho and his older sister. The family first lived in Detroit, Michigan for a short time. Then they learned about a large Korean community near Washington, D.C. They moved to Centerville, Virginia, which is in Fairfax County. In Virginia, Cho's parents worked very hard. They opened a dry cleaning business. The family became legal permanent residents of the United States. They also joined a local Korean Christian church and practiced their faith seriously. Cho was raised in this religious environment. From a very young age, Cho was noticeably quiet. Relatives in Korea said he rarely spoke. He did not make eye contact with people. He did not show physical affection like hugging family members. His grandfather said Cho never called him grandfather. This behavior worried his family. Cho attended Poplar Tree Elementary School in Chantilly, Virginia. A family friend said Cho often came home crying and throwing tantrums, saying he did not want to go back to school. However, he was a very fast learner. He finished a 3-year advanced program in 1.5 years. Teachers saw him as a good student. In middle school at Ormondstone Middle School, his quietness became more severe. By the 8th grade, a doctor diagnosed him with selective mutism. This is an anxiety disorder where a person cannot speak in certain social situations. He was also placed in special education classes for students with emotional problems. He received therapy and was allowed to skip activities like oral presentations. He attended Westfield High School. Other students often bullied him. They made fun of his shyness, his strange way of talking, and sometimes his Korean background. He became more of a loner. He did not interact with other students even when they tried to include him. In 1999, when Cho was in the 9th grade, the Columbine High School shooting happened. Cho was very focused on the news about it. He wrote a school paper where he said he wanted to repeat Columbine. The school saw this paper and contacted his sister. His parents were told, and they took Cho to see a psychiatrist. Cho graduated from high school in 2003. That fall, he started college at Virginia Tech. He first studied business information technology. Later, he changed his major to English because he wanted to be a writer. He lived in a dormitory on campus with roommates. In college, his behavior worried his professors and classmates. He almost never spoke. In a poetry class, his professor, Nikki Giovanni, found his behavior frightening. He wore sunglasses indoors. He took pictures of female classmates' legs under the desks. His writings for class were violent and disturbing. Professor Giovanni felt so unsafe that she had him removed from her class. Another professor, Lucinda Roy, then worked with him one-on-one. She also found his writing very dark and his manner strange. She told him to get counseling and contacted campus police. The police spoke to Cho but said he had not made any direct threats, so they could not do more. Students avoided him. His roommates said he was extremely reclusive. He invented an imaginary girlfriend named Jelly. He made disturbing phone calls to a roommate, pretending to be his own brother named ? He also contacted 2 different female students repeatedly, making them uncomfortable. These women reported him to campus police. The police warned him to stop contacting them. After the second warning, Cho sent an email to his roommate saying, "I might as well kill myself now." Because of this email, The police took Cho to a mental health facility for an evaluation on December 13, 2005. A doctor found that Cho was mentally ill and a danger to himself. A special justice ordered Cho to receive outpatient treatment. However, Cho never went to the treatment sessions. No one from the court or the health system followed up to make sure he went. Under Virginia law at the time, because he was not forced into a hospital for inpatient care, this ruling did not stop him from later buying guns. His family continued to worry about him. During the summer of 2006, his mother sought help from churches, describing his problems. But when the school year started, Cho returned to Virginia Tech for his final year. He became even more isolated, rarely leaving his room. In February 2007, Sung-Hui Cho began to plan a violent attack. He started by purchasing guns. On February 9th, he bought a .22 caliber Walther P22 semi-automatic pistol. He ordered the gun online from a dealer in Wisconsin. The gun was sent to a pawn shop in Blacksburg, Virginia, near his school. Cho went to the pawn shop, passed a background check, and took the gun. About a month later, on March 13th, he went to a gun store in Roanoke, Virginia. He bought a second handgun, a 9mm Glock 19 semi-automatic pistol. He passed another background check. He was able to buy these guns because the court order for his mental health treatment was not entered into the system that blocks such sales. After he had the guns, Cho bought extra magazines and ammunition. He chose hollow point bullets, which cause more damage than regular bullets. In mid-March, he went to a shooting range in Roanoke to practice using his new guns. He went to the range at least 2 or 3 times. Cho also wrote a long document and made videos. He called this his manifesto. In these materials, he raged against wealthy people, religion, and other students. He talked about feeling persecuted and wanting revenge. He mentioned the Columbine shooters. He recorded himself holding his guns and making threats. On the morning of April 16, 2007, Cho put his plan into action. He dressed in a black jacket, black pants, a black vest, and a black hat. He packed his 2 handguns, many magazines, and hundreds of bullets. He left his dorm room and walked to West Ambler Johnston Hall, a dormitory on the Virginia Tech campus. At about 7:15 a.m., he entered the dormitory and went to the 4th floor. He went to room 4040, where a student named Emily Hilscher lived. He shot and killed Emily Hilscher. Another student, Ryan Clark, who was in a room across the hall, heard the noise and came to help. Cho shot and killed Ryan Clark. After this, Cho left the dormitory quickly. He walked back to his own dorm room. He changed his clothes. He put the Walther P22 pistol and the jeans he had been wearing in his room. He then took the Glock 19 pistol, along with a backpack filled with more ammunition, and left his dorm again. For the next 2 hours, the university police responded to the first shootings. They did not know who the shooter was. They thought it might be a domestic dispute. They focused their investigation on the dormitory. During this time, Cho went to the campus post office. He mailed a package to the NBC News headquarters in New York. The package contained his manifesto, photos, and videos on a DVD. At about 9:45 a.m., Cho arrived at Norris Hall, an engineering building on the other side of campus. He used a chain and a lock to secure the main doors from the inside, making it harder for people to escape or for police to enter. He then went from classroom to classroom on the 2nd floor. He first entered room 206, a German class. He started shooting at the students and the professor. He then moved to room 207, a hydrology class, and continued shooting. He moved to room 204, and then to room 211, which was an engineering class. In each room, he fired many shots, walking up and down the aisles. He did not speak. His face showed no emotion. The shootings inside Norris Hall lasted about 9 minutes. Students and professors tried to hide under desks and barricade doors. Some broke windows to jump out to escape. Many people were shot. In total, inside Norris Hall, Cho killed 25 students and 5 professors. He also wounded 17 other people. Police officers arrived at Norris Hall and had to break through the chained doors. As they approached the second floor, they heard a final gunshot. They found Cho in room 211. He had shot himself in the head with his Glock pistol. He was dead. Later that day, police investigated the crimes. They connected the 2 shooting sites. Ballistics tests showed the same Glock 19 pistol was used in both the dormitory and Norris Hall. Police searched Cho's dorm room. They found the other pistol, his bloody jeans from the first shooting, and his writings. They also found the receipt for the package he had mailed. The next day, the package arrived at NBC News in New York. The news station alerted the police and later released some of the material to the public. The investigation into the shootings began immediately. Police identified Sung-Hui Cho as the shooter by matching his fingerprints on the guns to his immigration records. The chain of events was clear from the evidence. The guns in his room and at Norris Hall were the ones he had purchased. The bloody jeans in his dorm room matched the shoe prints outside the first victim's door. The timeline from the dormitory shooting to his return to his room to the attack at Norris Hall was established through witness statements and security camera footage. The package Cho mailed to NBC News was a crucial piece of evidence. It arrived on April 18th. Law enforcement officials reviewed all the materials. The videos and writings showed his planning and his motives, which were a mix of personal resentment and a desire for infamy. However, investigators concluded the materials offered little new insight into stopping such attacks in the future. A major focus of the investigation was how Cho was able to buy guns. Officials looked at the December 2005 court ruling that declared him a danger and ordered outpatient treatment. They discovered a critical failure in the system. The court had not forwarded Cho's information to the federal database used for background checks. Because he was not involuntarily committed to a hospital, Virginia's state system did not flag him either. This was a legal loophole that allowed him to pass the checks. Virginia's governor formed an independent panel to investigate the tragedy. The panel's report, released in August 2007, was highly critical. It found that Virginia Tech's mental health services, administration, and police failed to connect the dots on Cho's deteriorating mental state over many months. The university's warning systems were slow and confused. On the morning of the shootings, university officials waited too long to send a campus-wide alert after the first 2 deaths, not realizing a larger attack was coming. The report also criticized Virginia's mental health laws as flawed and the community health system for not following up on Cho's court-ordered treatment. The panel made many recommendations for changes to mental health care, campus security, and emergency communication at schools. Because Cho was dead, there was no criminal trial. However, many families of the victims filed lawsuits against Virginia Tech and the state. They argued that the university's negligence led to the deaths. In 2012, the U.S. Department of Education found that Virginia Tech violated federal law by waiting too long to warn students on April 16th. The university was fined. The state of Virginia and Virginia Tech eventually reached settlements with most of the victims' families, paying millions of dollars. As part of a settlement with the state, many families agreed to the creation of a permanent memorial fund to support safety and counseling programs. The tragedy led to new laws. Virginia reformed its mental health reporting laws to ensure people like Cho, who were ruled a danger, would be entered into the gun purchase background check database. Nationally, the event sparked debates about gun control, campus safety, and mental health treatment systems. Cho's family, devastated and ashamed, issued a public apology. They then retreated from public view, hiding from media attention. The victims and survivors worked to rebuild their lives. Some became advocates for gun violence prevention or mental health awareness. Virginia Tech built a memorial on campus with 32 stones for the victims who were killed. The final official report on the case was updated and released in late 2009, and the investigative records were made public years later, providing a full account of the failures and the facts. The Virginia Tech shooting remains one of the deadliest mass shootings in American history, a tragedy that exposed severe flaws in mental health, legal, and campus security systems. Story 5. Wu Bumkan was born on November 5, 1955, in a neighborhood called Koryang, located in the Dong district of Daegu, South Korea. His father worked as a policeman. From a young age, Wu saw his father's job and wanted to be just like him. This desire to follow in his father's footsteps shaped his early career goals. After finishing his basic schooling, Wu entered mandatory military service. He joined the Republic of Korea Marine Corps. During his time in the Marines, he learned to handle weapons. He practiced shooting often and became very skilled at it. His commanders noted that he was an excellent marksman. He served until he was discharged in 1978. With his military service complete and his sharpshooting skills noted, Wu pursued his goal of becoming a policeman. He entered the police force. Because of his proven skill with firearms, he was given a very important and trusted job. On April 11, 1981, he began working as a guard at the Blue House, which is the executive office and official residence of the South Korean president. This job was a sign of high trust. However, Wu had a personal problem. He drank alcohol heavily. He often drank to excess. When he was drunk, his behavior changed. He would become difficult or act improperly. This drinking problem and his behavior while intoxicated began to affect his work. His supervisors noticed the issue. Because of his problematic drinking and conduct, his police superiors decided he could no longer hold such a sensitive position. He was demoted. On December 30th, 1981, he was transferred away from the capital. He was sent to work as a regular patrolman in a small, rural village called Kungyu. This village was in Urian County, a quiet agricultural area very different from the city. In this village, Wu lived with his girlfriend, a woman named Chun Mal-soon. They were not married, which was uncommon in that place and time. Some people in the village talked about this arrangement. Chun Mal-soon later said that Wu felt inferior to others. She said he was bothered by the villagers' comments about them living together. She also described his general personality as a little eccentric, meaning he sometimes acted in odd or unusual ways. His life in the village was quiet. He performed his police duties, but he continued his habit of heavy drinking. He was far from the important job he once had. He was a man who had fallen from a position of honor to a simple job in a place he did not like. On the afternoon of April 26, 1982, Wu Bumkan was asleep in his home in Kungyu village. His girlfriend, Chun Mal-soon, was also there. She saw a fly land on his chest as he slept. She reached over and swatted the fly, hitting his chest in the process. The impact woke Wu suddenly. He became very angry. They had a heated argument about this. Feeling enraged, Wu left the house in the late afternoon. He went directly to the local police station where he worked. He reported for his duty shift at 4 p.m. While at the station, he began to drink alcohol. He drank heavily. Some early reports stated he became drunk, but people who saw him later that night said he did not appear intoxicated. He stayed at the station for several hours. At approximately 7:30 p.m., Wu left the police station and returned to his house. His girlfriend, Chun Mal-soon, was still there. His anger from the earlier argument had not gone away. He physically attacked her. He also started smashing the furniture inside their home, destroying things in a fit of rage. After this, he left his house again. His next move was to go to the local reservists' armory. This was a storage building for community weapons. He was still in his police uniform. He used his position as a police officer to get access to the weapons inside. Some reports say the other officers were not present because they were at a meeting. Other reports say he threatened or intimidated the guards who were there. Once inside, he collected a small arsenal of weapons. He took 2 M2 carbine rifles. He took 2 handguns. He gathered at least 180 rounds of ammunition for these weapons. He also took 7 hand grenades. He now had deadly force with him. At about 9:30 p.m., Wu began his attack. He shot and killed his first victim, a person outside. He then entered the local village post office. Inside, there were 3 telephone operators. He shot and killed all 3 of them. After killing them, he cut the telephone lines. This was a deliberate action to stop people from calling for help outside the area. He left the post office and went to a nearby marketplace in an area called Tarongni. There were people there. He threw one of his hand grenades into the area. He also began shooting his rifle at people passing by. He killed 6 people in this marketplace attack. During this shooting, his girlfriend, Chun Mal-soon, heard the noise and came out to see what was happening. Wu saw her and shot her, wounding her. She survived this injury. Wu then began to move from one village to the next. He used his police uniform to his advantage. People in the rural areas trusted a policeman. He would approach houses and tell the people inside he was investigating a problem. When they let him in, he would shoot the inhabitants with his rifle. He moved methodically. At 10:30 p.m., in another village, Wu took an 18-year-old high school student named Kim Judong hostage. He forced Kim to come with him. They walked to a place called Unjairi. Wu told the hostage he was thirsty. He ordered Kim to go into a grocery store owned by a man named Shin Weedu and get him a soft drink. Kim did as he was told. After Kim brought him the drink, Wu shot and killed the young man. Wu then turned his weapons on the grocery store owner and his family. He shot the owner, Shin Weedu, in the leg, but Shin managed to escape. Wu then killed Shin's wife, Sun Wonjiam, and their 2 daughters, Chong Sun and Su Jong. Wu continued shooting in this village, killing a total of 18 people there. Wu left that village and walked toward another one called Pyeongkananai. He entered a house and found a family of 4 asleep in their beds. He shot and killed all 4 people while they slept. He then went to another, larger house where the lights were still on. The owner of the house was awake. The owner saw Wu outside in a police uniform and asked what was happening. Wu lied to him. He told the man there was a security alert because North Korean spies had been seen in the area. The man believed the policeman and invited Wu inside for a meal. Wu sat down to eat with the man and his family and some guests. During the meal, Wu started complaining about his life. He talked about his low salary as a policeman. He talked about being demoted and sent from the big city of Busan to the countryside. The people listened. At one point, one of the guests looked at the grenades and ammunition Wu was carrying. The guest remarked that the grenades did not look real. This comment seemed to set Wu off. He stopped talking, stood up, and began shooting everyone in the house. He killed 12 people inside that home. He then went back outside into the village streets and killed 8 more people. In Pyeongkananai alone, he killed 24 people. Local police had been alerted to the shootings shortly after the first attacks at the post office. However, they were slow to organize. It took them a full hour to gather a team of 37 officers to begin searching for the gunman. The National Police Headquarters in Seoul, the capital city, was not informed about the crisis until 1:40 in the morning, hours after the killing started. Around that same time, near 1:40 a.m., Wu arrived at a farmhouse about 4 kilometers from his own police station. The farmhouse belonged to a 68-year-old man named Su In-soo. Wu again used his police uniform to deceive the family. He told them he was chasing a communist infiltrator. He said it was dangerous and told the family they should all gather together in the main room of the house so he could protect them. The family trusted him and did as he said. Once they were all gathered, he did not protect them. Instead, he held them hostage. 2 hours later, at around 3:40 a.m., the police search teams finally closed in on the farmhouse. They surrounded it. Inside, Wu knew he was trapped. He took 2 of his hand grenades. He strapped them to his own chest. He then detonated the grenades. The explosion killed Wu instantly. It also killed 3 of the family members he was holding hostage. The homeowner, Su In Su, was seriously injured but survived the blast. When police entered the farmhouse after the explosion, they found 4 unused rounds of ammunition and 1 remaining hand grenade. The series of attacks was over. In total, besides Wu himself, 56 people died that night from his shootings and explosions. Another 35 people were wounded. Some of the wounded were in very serious condition. The discovery of the full scale of the crime began as the sun rose on April 27, 1982. Police officers and local officials moved from village to village, following the path of violence. They found bodies in homes, in the post office, and in the marketplaces. The injured had been taken to hospitals in nearby cities like Jinju and Masan throughout the night. Because the attacks covered 4 different villages over 8 hours, and because victims were taken to 3 different hospitals, the full count of the dead and wounded was confused at first. Officials had to work carefully to identify everyone and avoid counting anyone twice. The national government in Seoul was shocked by the news. The incident showed serious failures in police procedure and emergency response. The first official actions were focused on police accountability. The chief of police for the province where the attacks happened was immediately suspended from his job. 4 other police officers from the local station were arrested. They were charged with negligence of duty. The charges were based on the fact that a large amount of weapons and grenades were taken from an armory without being stopped, and that the police response to the ongoing attack was very slow. The responsibility then moved to the highest levels of government. The Interior Minister of South Korea, Soo Chung-hwa, was the government official in charge of the National Police Force. The National Police Chief, a young MO, worked under him. Both men offered to resign their positions. They did this as a form of public atonement, accepting responsibility for the failures of the system they led. President Chun Doo-hwan held the Interior Minister directly responsible. On April 29, 1982, Soo Chung-hwa's resignation was accepted. He was replaced by a man named Roh Tae-woo. The South Korean National Assembly, which is the country's parliament, also took action. A special investigation team was formed. This team consisted of 19 parliamentarians. Their job was to find out exactly how the massacre happened and why the police response was so poorly handled. The team was led by the chairman of the Home Affairs Committee, a man named Kim Chong-ho. This parliamentary investigation gathered facts from police reports, hospital records, and witness statements. The government also addressed the victims and their families. The South Korean cabinet, which is the group of senior government ministers, approved the use of public funds to pay compensation. Money was given to the families of those who were killed to help with their loss. Money was also given to the people who were wounded to help pay for their medical treatment and their suffering. This was an official acknowledgement of the state's role in the tragedy, as the killer was a police officer using police weapons. For years, the memory of the event was difficult for the survivors and the families of the victims. They wanted a proper place to remember their loved ones. In 2018, groups of victims' families formally requested a memorial park from local officials. The governor of Urian County, Oh Tae-won, supported the idea. Planning and design for the park began in April 2022. The final design for a memorial monument was completed in November 2023. On April 26th, 2024, the 42nd anniversary of the attacks, the Yuryong 4.26 Memorial Park was officially opened. A public memorial service was held there at 10 a.m. that day. The park's main monument features a sculpture of two golden hands releasing a dove into the sky. Directly behind it is a wall with the names of the victims carved into it. The wall lists 56 people who were killed and 34 who were injured, creating a permanent record of the lives affected. The story ended with a permanent place for remembrance. Story 6. Stephen Paddock was born in April 1953 in Clinton, Iowa. He was the oldest of 4 brothers in his family. Shortly after his birth, his parents moved the family to Tucson, Arizona. His father's name was Benjamin Paddock, and his mother's name was Dolores Hudson. When Stephen was 7 years old, his father was arrested. Benjamin Paddock was a bank robber. After the arrest, Stephen's mother told her sons that their father had died in a car accident. She did not tell them he was a robber who went to prison. Dolores Paddock moved her sons to a neighborhood called Sun Valley in Los Angeles, California. The family did not have much money. Dolores worked as a secretary to support her 4 boys alone. Stephen grew up in a low-income household. People who knew him later said he talked about this time. He said growing up without a father and with little money made him want to rely only on himself. He wanted to be financially secure so he would never be poor. Stephen attended several different high schools in the Los Angeles area. He graduated in 1971. People from his high school remembered him as very good at math and very quiet. He did not talk much to others. After high school, he went to college at California State University, Northridge. He studied business and graduated in 1977. Stephen Paddock had several different jobs after college. First, he worked for the Postal Service for a few years. Then he worked for the Internal Revenue Service, which collects taxes. Later, he worked as an auditor, which is a person who checks financial records, for a company that worked with the military. He also went into business with one of his brothers. They bought and sold apartments and other buildings. He was very successful in real estate. He bought an apartment complex in 2004 and sold it in 2015. He made millions of dollars from this sale. He owned properties in California and Texas before selling them. Stephen Paddock was also a gambler. He liked to play video poker on machines in casinos. He played this game for more than 25 years. He often gambled at night and slept during the day. He did not like to be in the sun. He was not widely known as a very big gambler in Las Vegas, but he did gamble often. In his personal life, Stephen Paddock was married twice. Both marriages ended in divorce. He had no children. Family members said he remained friendly with his ex-wives after the divorces. In his later years, he had a girlfriend. He met her in Reno, Nevada. He lived in several states, including Texas, California, and Florida. In 2016, he moved to a retirement community in Mesquite, Nevada. He lived there with his girlfriend. Neighbors in Mesquite said he kept to himself. He did not talk much. People in the local gun community never saw him at shooting ranges or gun clubs. Stephen Paddock liked to travel. He had a passport and took about 20 trips on cruise ships. He visited countries in Europe and the Middle East. He also owned 2 small airplanes and had a pilot's license. His only known problem with the law was a ticket for a small traffic violation years before. He also once sued a Las Vegas hotel because he slipped and fell there. That lawsuit was settled out of court. In the last years of his life, his girlfriend said he seemed less affectionate. He complained about not feeling well and was sensitive to smells. He was prescribed medicine for anxiety. Some people reported that he sometimes smelled of alcohol in the mornings. Public records showed he had been losing a lot of money in the 2 years before his death, which may have upset him. He continued to gamble. In the year leading up to October 2017, Stephen Paddock began buying many guns. He purchased more than 50 firearms, mostly rifles. Before this, he owned mainly handguns. His girlfriend noticed the many packages containing guns and parts, but she thought it was just a new hobby. He also bought devices called bump stocks, which allow a semi-automatic rifle to fire bullets very rapidly. 2 weeks before the attack, Paddock sent his girlfriend on a trip to the Philippines. He bought her ticket and sent her a large sum of money. He said it was for her to buy a house there. After she left, most of their communication was through text messages and email. On September 25, 2017, Paddock checked into a hotel called the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada. His room was on the 32nd floor. He brought many bags with him, which looked like bags for carrying guns to a shooting range. He also had a computer. 4 days later, on September 29th, he moved into a second room right next to the first one. He asked the hotel to connect these 2 rooms with a door. Both rooms had windows with a clear view of a large open area called the Las Vegas Village. Across from the hotel, a country music festival was being held in that open area. The festival was called the Route 91 Harvest Festival. On the night of October 1st, thousands of people were there to watch the final performance. Inside his 2 connected hotel rooms, Paddock had set up his rifles. He had 23 firearms in the rooms. Most of them were AR-15 style rifles. He had placed them on bipods, which are stands, near the windows. He had equipped many of them with bump stocks and high-powered scopes. He had also brought a large amount of ammunition. He used special magazines that could hold 100 bullets each, so he could fire for a long time without reloading. He placed a camera on a service cart in the hallway outside his room. This camera was connected to his computer inside, so he could see if anyone was approaching his door. He also used a hammer to put screws into the door frame of the hallway door. This was to make it harder for anyone to get into the hallway from the stairwell. At 9:59 p.m., a hotel security guard named Jesus Campos approached the 32nd floor. He was checking on a report of a door left open on another floor. When he reached Paddock's hallway, he found the door from the stairwell was stuck because of the screws. As Campos was dealing with this, Paddock fired several bullets through his own hotel room door. The shots hit Campos in the leg. 6 minutes later, at 10:05 p.m., Paddock used a hammer to break the windows in his suite. He then began shooting at the crowd of people at the music festival below. He started with a few single shots. Then he used the bump stocks to fire long bursts of bullets very quickly. The sound was like a continuous, loud cracking noise. People at the concert initially thought it was fireworks. When they realized it was gunfire, they began to run and hide. Paddock switched between different rifles during the attack. He would fire from one window, then move to another rifle at a different window. He fired over 1,000 bullets down onto the crowd. The shooting lasted for about 10 minutes. It caused chaos and panic. People were shot and killed. Others were injured by bullets or hurt while trying to escape. Many people tried to help those who were wounded. At 10:15 p.m., the firing from the 32nd floor stopped. Inside the room, Stephen Paddock shot himself in the head with a handgun. He died immediately. The first police officers arrived on the 32nd floor at 10:17 p.m. They had to move carefully because they did not know where the shooter was. They knew a security guard had been shot. They worked to clear other hotel rooms on the floor to make sure no other guests were in danger. A special police team called SWAT arrived later. At 11:20 p.m., they used a small explosive to blow open the door to Paddock's suite. They found him dead on the floor. Around him were the many rifles, empty bullet casings, and the tools he had used. The attack resulted in 60 people being killed at the scene or later dying from their injuries. 867 people were injured by gunfire or in the panic. It was the deadliest mass shooting by a single person in modern United States history. After the police entered the hotel room and found Stephen Paddock dead, the investigation began immediately. The crime scene was very large. It included the 2 hotel suites, Paddock's car in the hotel parking lot, and his homes in Mesquite and Reno. Many different police agencies worked together. In the hotel room, detectives collected all 23 firearms. They found the bump stock devices attached to 14 of the rifles. They also found the hammer used to break the windows and the tools used to screw the hallway door shut. A note with handwritten calculations was discovered. The math on the note showed Paddock had calculated the distance to the concert stage, the angle of his shot, and how gravity would affect the bullets. This proved he planned the shooting for accuracy. The police removed computers and phones from the room. Computer experts later examined these devices. They found that Paddock had searched the internet for information about large outdoor concerts, hotel room layouts, and ballistics. One laptop was missing its hard drive, which was never found. On other devices, investigators discovered hundreds of illegal images of child pornography. This discovery led to a separate investigation. Because Paddock was dead, there could be no criminal trial against him. The investigation then focused on learning his motive and whether anyone helped him. Police interviewed his girlfriend, who was still in the Philippines. She was fully cooperative. She told them about his gun purchases and his sending her away before the attack. She said she had no knowledge of his plans. The police also interviewed his brothers, ex-wives, and acquaintances. No one could explain why he did it. The police traced all the guns. They learned Paddock bought them legally from gun stores in Nevada, Utah, California, and Texas over the previous year. He passed all required background checks. The bump stocks were also purchased legally. At Paddock's house in Mesquite, police found 19 more firearms, explosives, tannerite, and bullets. In his car trunk at the Mandalay Bay, they found more explosives, ammonium nitrate, and over 1,000 rounds of ammunition. Bomb experts determined that while he had materials to make bombs, he had not built any. The child pornography found on the computers led to an arrest, but not of Stephen Paddock. His brother, Bruce Paddock, was arrested in Los Angeles on child pornography charges. This was a separate case, but it started from the evidence found in Stephen Paddock's hotel room. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, joined the investigation. They analyzed his financial records, travel history, and electronic devices. They found no evidence that he was connected to any terrorist group. They also found no consistent political or social ideology that explained the attack. The FBI's final report suggested he may have been upset about how casinos treated him as a gambler, but the local police said a clear motive could not be determined. Over a year after the shooting, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department released a final report. It stated that Stephen Paddock acted alone. The report said he carefully planned the attack to cause maximum injury. He had no known history of mental illness diagnosis, though a doctor had once prescribed him anti-anxiety medicine. The report concluded that the reason for his actions was unknown and likely would remain unknown. Many victims and their families filed lawsuits against MGM Resorts International, the owner of the Mandalay Bay Hotel. The lawsuits claimed the hotel should have noticed Paddock's suspicious behavior with his many bags and could have done more to stop him. These lawsuits were eventually combined into one large case. In 2020, MGM Resorts settled the lawsuits. They agreed to pay up to $800 million to the victims and their families. The company did not admit any fault as part of the settlement. As a result of the shooting, there was a national debate about bump stocks. In 2019, the United States government banned the sale and possession of bump stocks, making them illegal. The final official act was the release of Paddock's brain for study by experts at Stanford University. They examined it for any physical abnormality that could explain his behavior. Their report found that his brain was normal, with no tumors or damage. The case was officially closed with no definitive answer for why it happened, leaving a community and a nation to heal from a tragedy that began and ended with a single, isolated individual in a hotel room. Story 7. James Holmes was born in December 1987 in San Diego, California. His father worked as a mathematician and scientist. His mother was a registered nurse. He had one younger sister. The family first lived in Oak Hills, a community in Monterey County, California. He attended elementary school there. When James was 12 years old, his family moved back to San Diego. They lived in the Rancho Penasquitos neighborhood, which was an affluent area. After this move, people who knew him said he began to decline socially. He attended Westview High School and graduated in 2006. During high school, he played soccer and ran cross-country. His family attended a Lutheran church. According to his lawyer, James began to suffer from mental health issues when he was in middle school. He attempted to end his own life at the age of 11. As a child, he told people he was frightened of something he called nail ghosts, which he said would hammer on the walls at night. Despite these struggles, he finished high school. After high school, James attended the University of California, Riverside. He studied neuroscience. In 2010, he earned a bachelor's degree with the highest honors. He was at the top of his class and was a member of several academic honor societies. His professors wrote recommendation letters that described him as an effective group leader and a mature student. During his summers in college, James held different jobs. In 2006, he worked as an intern at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies. His supervisor there found him to be stubborn, uncommunicative, and socially inept. James did not finish his assigned project. In 2008, he worked as a counselor at a summer camp for children. There were no reported problems during this job. In 2010, after graduating, he worked at a pill coating factory. A co-worker there said James was unsociable and once acted strangely by staring at a blank wall without responding when spoken to. In June 2011, James began a graduate program. He moved to Aurora, Colorado, to study neuroscience at the University of Colorado. He received grant money and a stipend to support his studies. He lived in an apartment building with other graduate students. In a rental application, he described himself as quiet and easygoing. In graduate school, his mental health challenges continued. He began seeing shadows and flickers at the corners of his eyes, which he imagined were fighting. He started dating a fellow student in late 2011, but their relationship ended in early 2012. He told a doctor later that this breakup contributed to severe depression. He sought help at the student mental health clinic and was seen by a psychiatrist named Dr. Lynn Fenton. He told her about having thoughts of killing people. He saw her several times but rejected suggestions for treatment. His mother informed the doctor that James had long-standing social problems. In the spring of 2012, his academic performance began to get worse. He failed an important oral exam at the university in early June. 3 days after failing that exam, he began the process of withdrawing from his graduate program. He gave no explanation for leaving. After withdrawing from his graduate program in early June 2012, James Holmes began to plan and prepare for a violent attack. His planning was detailed and took place over several weeks. The first step in his preparation was to acquire weapons and ammunition. All purchases were legal and passed required background checks. On May 22nd, before leaving school, he had bought a Glock 22 pistol at a sporting goods store in Aurora. On May 28th, he bought a Remington 870 shotgun at a store in Denver. On June 7th, just hours after failing his important exam, he purchased a Smith & Wesson M and P15 rifle. Over the next 4 months, he He also bought thousands of rounds of ammunition for these weapons over the internet. Next, he decided on the location for his attack. He considered places like an airport, but ruled it out due to security. He chose a movie theater. He specifically selected the Century 16 Theater in Aurora. He liked this theater because its exit doors could be locked from the inside, which he believed would trap people and cause more casualties. He chose a midnight showing of a film because he thought fewer children would be present. He wrote that his message was that there was no message, and he did not want the attack to be seen as terrorism. He then gathered other equipment. On July 2nd, he ordered an assault vest, magazine holders, and a knife online. He also bought materials to make explosive devices. He later told police he had made spike strips to use if police chased him by car. In late June, he tried to join a gun range in Byers, Colorado. He emailed an application. The owner called him, but only reached his voicemail. The message Holmes left was strange and incoherent. The owner found it so bizarre that he told his staff to alert him if Holmes ever arrived. Holmes never went to the range. As July continued, his plans solidified. He detailed these plans in a notebook. This notebook contained his thoughts and drawings about killing people. In the late afternoon of July 19th, he mailed this notebook to his psychiatrist, Dr. Lynn Fenton. The package would not be delivered until later. On the evening of July 19th, he went to the Century 16 Theater. He bought a ticket for the midnight showing of a new film and went into the auditorium with the other audience members. He sat near the front. About 20 minutes into the movie, he quietly left the theater through an exit door near the screen. He propped the door open so it would not lock. He then went to his car, which was parked in a space behind the theater. He put on ballistic gear including a gas mask, a helmet, and gloves. He took out his loaded rifle, shotgun, and pistol. He also took several canisters filled with a gas or smoke chemical. He walked back to the propped open door and entered the dark theater. He stood in front of the screen. He threw the gas canisters into the seating area. They began to fill the room with smoke. People initially thought it was part of the movie. He then began shooting at the audience. He started with the rifle, firing first at the ceiling and then aiming into the crowd. He moved up the aisle, continuing to shoot. When the rifle jammed, he switched to the shotgun. When the shotgun was empty, he used the pistol. He shot people who were trying to hide or escape. The entire attack lasted only a few minutes. He then walked back out through the same exit door, leaving his weapons behind. He went to his car behind the theater. There, he did not try to drive away. He simply stood by the driver's side door. Inside the theater, 12 people were killed and 70 others were wounded by gunfire or in the resulting chaos. Police officers arrived at the theater within minutes due to emergency calls. They found Holmes standing calmly by his car in the parking lot. He did not resist arrest. He was taken into custody. When questioned, he immediately told the police that he had filled his apartment with explosives before leaving for the theater. The police evacuated the entire apartment building. Bomb squad technicians spent the next day safely disabling the complex booby traps. This discovery confirmed the attack was highly planned. The investigation began immediately. Detectives collected all the weapons left in the theater and from Holmes's car. They interviewed hundreds of survivors and witnesses. They also found the notebook Holmes had mailed to his psychiatrist. It was discovered, still in its package, in the university mailroom the next day. The notebook's contents, which detailed his plans, became a key piece of evidence. Police also tracked all of his purchases of weapons, ammunition, and tactical gear. Holmes was formally charged with 24 counts of first-degree murder, 2 for each person killed, and 140 counts of attempted murder, plus 1 charge for possessing explosives. His first court appearances were quiet. He often appeared dazed and did not speak. His public defenders stated they needed time to evaluate his mental illness. In March 2013, His defense team offered a guilty plea in exchange for a sentence of life in prison, but prosecutors rejected the offer and decided to seek the death penalty. In May 2013, Holmes changed his plea to not guilty by reason of insanity. Because of this plea, court-appointed psychiatrists were assigned to evaluate him. 2 doctors interviewed him for many hours. Both psychiatrists diagnosed him with serious mental illnesses, including schizoaffective disorder. However, both doctors concluded that despite his illness, he was legally sane at the time of the shooting. They stated he knew right from wrong and understood the consequences of his actions. The trial began in April 2015. The prosecution showed the jury video of Holmes buying his tickets and the weapons he used. Survivors testified about the horror inside the theater. The defense did not dispute that Holmes was the shooter. Their entire case focused on his severe mental illness. They showed the jury the notebook with its disturbing drawings. They also played jail videos showing Holmes banging his head against a wall. The psychiatrists testified about their evaluations. In July 2015, the jury found Holmes guilty on all 165 counts. The next phase was to decide his sentence, either life in prison without parole or the death penalty. During this sentencing phase, Holmes's parents pleaded for his life, asking the jury to spare him execution because of his illness. Victims and family members gave powerful statements about their loss and suffering. The jury could not reach a unanimous decision on the death penalty. One juror firmly opposed it due to Holmes's mental illness. Because the vote was not unanimous, the judge was required by law to sentence Holmes to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In August 2015, the judge formally sentenced Holmes to 12 consecutive life sentences, plus 3,318 additional years for the attempted murders and explosives charge. Holmes was initially sent to a Colorado prison. In late 2015, he was secretly transferred to a federal supermax prison in Pennsylvania after another inmate attacked him. He remains there, isolated from the general prison population for his own safety. In 2015, a judge also ordered him to pay nearly $1 million in restitution to the victims and the State Victim Compensation Fund. The legal process provided a definitive conclusion, and the criminal was permanently removed from society. Story 8. Jared Lee Launer was born on September 10, 1988, in Tucson, Arizona. He was the only child of Randy and Amy Launer. His mother, Amy, worked for the Pima County Parks Department, taking care of plants. His father, Randy, was a retired truck driver. Neighbors saw the Launer family as very private. They did not often talk to people outside their home. Jared attended Mountain View High School. During his high school years, he had friends and was seen as a normal teenager. He had a girlfriend for a time. A friend from that period described him as sweet and caring. He finished his high school education, but did not graduate with his class in 2006. He dropped out. After leaving high school, people who knew Jared began to notice a change in his behavior. He started to keep more to himself. He spoke less to neighbors and old friends. He got a job at a Quiznos sandwich shop, but was fired. His manager at Quiznos said Jared's personality had changed. After losing that job, he volunteered at an animal shelter. His job was to walk dogs. However, he was asked to leave the volunteer position because he did not follow instructions. He walked dogs in areas where they were not allowed and would not listen when corrected. During this time, Jared had 2 minor problems with the law. In 2007, he was ticketed for having drug paraphernalia. In 2008, he was charged with defacing a street sign. He painted symbols on the sign. He told police the symbols were Christian. He entered a program for this offense, and the charge was later dismissed. Jared began using drugs and alcohol. A close friend from high school said Jared's life became worse after a breakup with his girlfriend. He used marijuana, cocaine, psychedelic mushrooms, LSD, and a legal herb called salvia. Former classmates remembered him as someone who often used marijuana. In late 2008, he decided to stop using all drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. He did not use them again. In 2008, Jared tried to join the U.S. Army. The Army rejected him. They said he was not qualified. Military sources stated that during the application process, Jared admitted to using marijuana many times. His parents became worried about his behavior. They saw him acting strangely. To keep him at home at night, they sometimes disabled his car. His father once took away a shotgun that Jared owned. They encouraged him to get help from a mental health professional. Jared also became very focused on trying to control his dreams. In 2010, Jared attended Pima Community College. His time there was difficult. He disrupted classes and the library. Campus police had to speak with him 5 times. Some teachers were afraid of his behavior. They thought he might be mentally ill and could be dangerous. On September 29th, the college found a video Jared posted online. In the video, he said the college was a scam and was illegal under the U.S. Constitution. The college suspended Jared. They sent a letter to his parents. The college said Jared could only return if he got a mental health evaluation. A professional would have to say he was not a danger. On October 4th, Jared and his parents met with college officials. At that meeting, Jared chose to withdraw from the college instead. He never got the mental health evaluation and never went back. During a class at the college, a female student read a poem about having an abortion. She became emotional. Jared laughed and made inappropriate comments. He talked about terrorism and making a bomb from a fetus. Other students in the class were shocked and upset by his reaction. Jared was registered to vote as an independent. He voted in 2006 and 2008, but not in 2010. A friend said Jared did not watch TV news or listen to political radio shows. He was not clearly on the political left or right. However, he did show anger toward the government and former President George W. Bush. He held strong negative views about women in power. A friend recalled that Jared often said women should not hold powerful positions. He specifically disliked U.S. Representative Gabrielle Giffords, who was a congresswoman from Arizona. He called her a fake. He had attended a public event she held in 2007. He felt she did not answer his question properly. He kept the form letter she sent after the event. He stored it in a box with an envelope where he had written violent phrases. Jared was interested in conspiracy theories. He spent time on internet forums that discussed them. He believed theories about the September 11th attacks, a coming New World Order, and an apocalypse in 2012. His writings showed a deep distrust of the government. He believed the government used grammar to control people's thoughts. He also believed the U.S. currency was not real money and that NASA faked space missions. Regarding religion, Jared did not believe in God. He was critical of all religions, especially Christianity. He was not anti-Semitic, but rather against organized religion in general. He stated he did not trust in God. After withdrawing from Pima Community College in October 2010, Jared Launer stayed at his parents' home. His mental state continued to concern his family. His parents took steps to limit his movements, sometimes disabling his car at night to keep him from leaving. On November 30th, 2010, Launer went to a Sportsman's Warehouse store in Tucson. At the store, he legally purchased a Glock 19 semi-automatic pistol. He also bought a magazine capable of holding many rounds of ammunition. In the early morning hours of January 8, 2011, Launer was active. At 2:05 a.m., he left a voicemail for a friend. His message said, "Hey man, it's Jared. Me and you had good times. Peace out. Later." Then at 4:12 a.m., he made a post on his MySpace page. The post read, "Goodbye, friends. Please don't be mad at me. The literacy rate is below 5%. I haven't talked to one person who is literate. I want to make it out alive. The longest war in the history of the United States. Goodbye. I'm saddened with the current currency and job employment. I had a bully at school. Thank you. P.S. Plead the fifth." On the same page, he posted a photograph of the Glock pistol sitting on top of a U.S. history textbook. Later that morning, he began his final preparations. At 7:04 a.m., he went to a Walmart store near the Foothills Mall to buy ammunition. He did not complete the purchase there. He then drove to another Walmart on North Cortaro Road. At 7:28 a.m., he successfully purchased a box of 9mm ammunition. While driving at 7:34 a.m., an officer from the Arizona Game and Fish Department stopped him for running a red light. The officer checked for any warrants. Finding none, he gave Launer a warning and let him go. Launer then returned to his home. He called a taxicab. He did not take his own car, which his parents may have disabled. The taxi arrived and took him to a Safeway supermarket in the Casas Adobes area of northwest Tucson. U.S. Representative Gabrielle Giffords was scheduled to hold a Congress on Your Corner event for her constituents in the store's parking lot that morning. The event began at 10 a.m. About a dozen people had gathered in line to speak with the Congresswoman. Giffords was standing near the store entrance under a sunshade. At approximately 10:10 a.m., Launer walked up to the gathering. He got very close to Congresswoman Giffords, raised his recently purchased Glock pistol, and shot her in the head at point-blank range. He then began firing indiscriminately into the crowd. He moved sideways, continuing to shoot. He attempted to reload the pistol with a second, high-capacity magazine. As he tried to reload, he dropped the magazine. Several bystanders acted bravely. A 74-year-old man ran toward Launer and was shot in the back. A 61-year-old woman grabbed the fresh magazine, preventing Launer from loading it. Another man, who was shot in the leg, helped tackle Launer to the ground. Together with other people, they subdued him and held him down until law enforcement arrived. The shooting lasted only about 15 seconds. In that time, Launer fired 31 bullets from his pistol. 6 people were killed. They were a 9-year-old girl, a federal judge, a 76-year-old man, a 79-year-old man, a 30-year-old man, and a 65-year-old woman. Congresswoman Giffords was critically injured with a gunshot wound through the left side of her brain. 12 other people were wounded by gunfire. 1 additional person was injured while fleeing the scene. Police and emergency medical services arrived quickly. The scene was chaotic, with victims on the ground. Officers immediately took Launer into custody from the bystanders who were holding him. As he was arrested, he stated, "I plead the fifth." He was placed in a patrol car and driven away. The injured, including Giffords, were rushed to nearby hospitals for emergency surgery. Later that day, federal authorities charged Launer. The initial charges were the attempted assassination of a member of Congress, the murder of a federal employee, the judge, and the attempted murder of 2 other federal employees, Giffords' aides. He was taken to the Federal Correctional Institution in Phoenix. He was held there without bail, kept alone in a cell for 23 hours each day. The investigation into the shooting began immediately. At the crime scene, police secured the weapon, the dropped magazine, and the box of unused ammunition. They identified all the victims and witnesses. Because the attack targeted a United States Congresswoman and killed a federal judge, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, took the lead in the federal case. On January 19, 2011, a federal grand jury indicted Jared Launer on 3 initial charges. On March 3rd, a new grand jury issued a superseding indictment with 49 charges. These included multiple counts of murder, attempted murder, and causing death to a federal employee. Launer pleaded not guilty to all charges on March 9th. However, his mental health became the primary legal issue. His defense attorney, Judy Clark, raised concerns about his ability to understand the case against him. The court ordered psychiatric evaluations. On May 25, 2011, after receiving reports from medical experts, Judge Larry Allen Burns ruled that Launer was not competent to stand trial. This meant his mental illness, diagnosed as schizophrenia, prevented him from understanding the court proceedings or assisting in his own defense. All trial preparations were suspended. Launer was sent to a federal prison medical center in Springfield, Missouri, for treatment. The goal of the treatment was to restore his competency so the trial could proceed. On September 28, 2011, the court held a hearing to check his status. During this hearing, Launer had a loud outburst. He had to be removed from the courtroom. Medical experts again found him incompetent. A major legal battle followed over whether prison doctors could force Launer to take antipsychotic medication. His defense team argued he had the right to refuse it. In June 2011, the trial judge allowed forced medication to make him competent for trial. In July, a federal appeals court overturned that, stating he could not be medicated solely for trial purposes. However, the appeals court said the prison could medicate him if he was a danger to himself or others in the facility. Prison doctors then began forcibly medicating Launer with the drug risperidone, stating he posed a danger within the prison. His lawyers fought this, but higher courts eventually allowed the treatment to continue for safety reasons. The forced medication lasted for over a year. The treatment had an effect. By the summer of 2012, the prison psychologists reported a significant change. They said Launer understood his situation, showed remorse, and could participate in his defense. On August 7, 2012, Judge Burns held another competency hearing. The court psychologist, Dr. Christina Peets, testified that the medication had restored Launer's competency. She said he was now aware of the crimes he committed and was saddened by them. Judge Burns agreed and found him competent. Immediately after being found competent, Launer changed his plea. In an agreement with federal prosecutors, he pleaded guilty to 19 of the 49 charges. The charges he admitted to included the murders of the 6 people who died and the attempted assassination of Gabrielle Giffords. In exchange for his guilty plea, the prosecution agreed not to seek the death penalty. The plea deal was approved by the U.S. Attorney General, the local U.S. Attorney, and importantly by Gabrielle Giffords, her husband, and the families of the other victims. The sentencing hearing was held on November 8, 2012, in Tucson. During the hearing, survivors and family members of the victims gave statements about their loss and pain. Launer did not speak. His attorney read a statement from his parents, who expressed sorrow for the victims. Judge Burns then sentenced Jared Launer to 7 consecutive life terms in prison, plus 140 years, with no possibility of parole. He was also ordered to pay restitution to the victims amounting to millions of dollars. Following the federal sentencing, the Pima County Attorney, Barbara Lowell, announced the state of Arizona would not file its own murder charges. She stated that after consulting with all the victims and families, they believed federal justice was sufficient and wanted to avoid a second painful trial. This meant Launer would serve his life sentences in the federal prison system. Jared Launer was sent to the Federal Medical Center in Rochester, Minnesota. This is a specialized prison for inmates requiring long-term medical or mental health care. He remains there, serving his life sentences. Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords survived her traumatic brain injury. After a long and difficult recovery, she resigned from Congress to focus on her health. She and her husband became advocates for gun control and victims' rights. The community of Tucson and the nation were forever changed by the events of January 8, 2011. The story ends with Jared Launer imprisoned for life, his victims remembered, and a community continuing to heal. Story 9. Timothy James McVeigh was born on April 23, 1968, in Lockport, New York. He was the second of 3 children and the only son in his family. His parents were William McVeigh and Noreen Hill. The family lived in a working-class area. When Timothy was 10 years old, his parents divorced. This event had a big effect on him. After the divorce, he and his sisters went to live with their father in the smaller, more rural town of Pendleton, New York. As a child, Timothy was very quiet and often kept to himself. He was a small boy and some other children bullied him at school. He did not have many friends. To escape, he would dive into fantasy worlds, sometimes imagining getting back at those who picked on him. Most people who knew him then remember him as being extremely shy. He had one girlfriend during his teenage years, but later said he never felt comfortable or knew how to talk to girls. In high school, Timothy found an interest in computers. He spent hours programming on his Commodore 64 computer. He even managed to hack into some computer systems, which he saw as a game. He was named the school's most promising computer programmer when he graduated in 1986. His grades were not very good, but he showed skill in this one area. It was also during these years that his grandfather introduced him to firearms. He became fascinated with guns. He sometimes brought them to school to show other students, which was against the rules. After high school, Timothy briefly went to a business college but dropped out quickly. He then got a job as an armored car guard. His coworkers noticed he was obsessed with guns and military gear. He talked about guns constantly. In May 1988, at age 20, he decided to join the United States Army. He saw the military as a place where his interest in weapons and tactics would be valued. He did very well in basic training. He was a top performer in handling weapons like the Bradley fighting vehicle's cannon. He was promoted to the rank of sergeant. During his Army service, he was stationed at Fort Riley in Kansas. It was here he met 2 men who would become important later, Terry Nichols and Michael Fortier. They shared his strong interest in guns and survivalist ideas. Timothy served in the Gulf War in 1991. He was a good soldier and won several awards, including a Bronze Star. However, the violence of the war affected him. He later spoke about seeing dead Iraqi soldiers and feeling disturbed by the carnage. After returning from the war, Timothy tried to join the Army's Special Forces. He quit the training after only 2 days, saying he was not physically ready. He decided to leave the Army altogether and received an honorable discharge in late 1991. Back in civilian life, he felt lost and angry. He moved in with his Army friend, Terry Nichols, on a farm in Michigan. He worked different jobs but did not find a career. He felt the government was controlling people's lives too much. He wrote letters to newspapers complaining about taxes and gun laws. He believed the government was becoming an enemy of its own people. A major event happened in 1993. The FBI and other federal agents surrounded a religious group called the Branch Davidians in Waco, Texas. After a 51-day standoff, a fire broke out and many people inside, including children, died. Timothy McVeigh traveled to Waco during the standoff to see it for himself. He was furious at the government's actions. He saw it as a brutal attack on American citizens. After the fire, his anger grew much stronger. He began traveling to gun shows across the country. At these shows, he sold survivalist items and books. He also talked with many people who were angry at the federal government. He spent a lot of time with his other Army friend, Michael Fortier, in Arizona. During this period, his views became more extreme. He started reading books that described violent revolutions against the government. He and Terry Nichols also began learning how to make explosives from cheap, common materials. Timothy McVeigh felt that talking was no longer enough. He believed that action was necessary to wake people up to what he saw as government tyranny. After the events at Waco, Timothy McVeigh decided to move from ideas to action. He wanted to punish the federal government and create a loud, shocking statement that would make people pay attention. He first thought about assassinating specific government officials. He made a list of names that included the Attorney General and an FBI agent involved at Waco. However, he concluded that killing one person would not be enough. He believed attacking a federal building would be more powerful. It would symbolize an attack on the government itself. McVeigh began to plan. He needed a target. He obtained a book listing federal buildings across the United States. He looked for a building that housed agencies he blamed for Waco, like the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, ATF, and the FBI. He chose the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. The building had offices for many federal agencies. He had been to Oklahoma City before and was familiar with the area. He did not know there was a daycare center on the second floor. To carry out his plan, McVeigh needed a very large bomb. He knew from his military training and reading that a bomb made from fertilizer and fuel could be very powerful. This type of explosive is called ANFO. He needed help to gather the materials. He turned to his old Army friend, Terry Nichols. Nichols agreed to help him. Together, they started buying large amounts of agricultural fertilizer, which is high in ammonium nitrate. They bought it from different stores in small amounts to avoid suspicion. They also collected other supplies like racing fuel to mix with the fertilizer. McVeigh also told his other friend, Michael Fortier, about his plan. McVeigh and Fortier even took a trip to Oklahoma City. McVeigh pointed out the Murrah building to Fortier and explained his idea. Fortier did not agree with the plan and chose not to help, but he also did not tell anyone in authority about it. Fortier's wife, Lori, also learned of the plan. She later helped McVeigh create a fake driver's license using a computer laminating machine. This fake ID would be used to rent a truck. In the months leading up to the attack, McVeigh and Nichols stored the bomb materials. They kept some at Nichols' home in Kansas and other in a storage unit. As the date got closer, they moved everything to a rented shed. McVeigh decided the attack would happen on April 19th. This was the anniversary of two events that made him very angry: the end of the Waco siege in 1993 and an earlier confrontation at Ruby Ridge, Idaho, in 1992. He saw the date as symbolic. A few days before April 19th, McVeigh went to Junction City, Kansas. Using his fake ID under the name Robert Kling, he rented a large Ryder truck. He told the rental company he needed it to move furniture. He then drove the truck to the rented shed where the bomb materials were stored. Over 2 days, with help from Terry Nichols, McVeigh built the bomb inside the truck. They filled plastic barrels with the fertilizer and fuel mixture. They arranged the barrels in the center of the truck's cargo area. They added explosive primers and long fuses. The entire bomb weighed about 5,000 pounds. On the morning of April 19th, 1995, McVeigh was alone. He dressed in a printed T-shirt with a picture of Abraham Lincoln and a quote about tyrants. He got into the rented Ryder truck and began the drive from Kansas to Oklahoma City. He arrived in the city just before 9 a.m. He drove to the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. He parked the truck directly in front of the building, under a glass canopy. The building's offices were open, and many people were starting their work day. Employees were at their desks. Parents had just dropped off their children at the America's Kids Daycare Center on the second floor. McVeigh lit 2 long fuses. These fuses were designed to burn for about 2 minutes. After lighting them, he quickly got out of the truck, locked the door, and began walking away. He got into a yellow Mercury Marquis car he had parked nearby and drove away. At 9:02 a.m., the fuses reached the bomb. A massive explosion tore through the north side of the 9-story building. The force was so great it destroyed nearly half the structure. Concrete, glass, and metal were blown apart. Cars nearby were crushed or set on fire. The blast was felt and heard for miles. Inside, everything was chaos. Floors collapsed. Walls crumbled. People were trapped under concrete slabs and twisted steel. The daycare center was largely destroyed. The blast killed 168 people immediately or within minutes. Among the dead were 19 children who were in the daycare. 8 federal law enforcement officers also died. Another 684 people were injured. Some were badly burned. Others had broken bones or were cut by flying glass and debris. People from all over Oklahoma City ran toward the building to help. They pulled survivors from the wreckage with their bare hands. Firefighters, police, and ambulance crews arrived quickly. They worked for hours to rescue people trapped in the rubble. It was the worst terrorist attack on American soil at that time. About 75 minutes after the explosion, Timothy McVeigh was driving north on a highway about 60 miles from Oklahoma City. A state trooper named Charlie Hanger saw his car. The car had no license plate. The trooper pulled McVeigh over. When the trooper approached, McVeigh told him he had a gun under his jacket. It was illegal to carry a concealed weapon without a permit in Oklahoma. The trooper arrested McVeigh for the traffic violation and the illegal weapon. McVeigh was taken to the county jail in Perry, Oklahoma. At this time, the police there did not know who he was. They treated him as just another person arrested on a minor charge. He was booked into the local jail. While Timothy McVeigh sat in the Noble County Jail in Oklahoma, federal investigators in Oklahoma City began their work. The bombing site was a scene of terrible destruction. Rescue workers continued to search for survivors in the rubble. At the same time, agents from the FBI and other agencies started collecting evidence. One of the most important pieces was found in the street, a twisted piece of metal from the rear axle of a vehicle. Stamped on this axle was a vehicle identification number, or VIN. Investigators traced this VIN. They learned it came from a Ryder rental truck. They then contacted the Ryder company. Records showed that this specific truck had been rented from a branch in Junction City, Kansas. Agents went to the rental office in Junction City. Employees there described the man who rented the truck. He had used the name Robert Kling. An FBI artist worked with the employees to create a detailed sketch of this man. The FBI released this sketch to the public, asking for help to identify him. They also distributed it around Junction City. The manager of a motel called the Dreamland Motel saw the sketch. She recognized the man. He had stayed at her motel just a few days before the bombing. He had registered under his real name, Timothy McVeigh. She told the FBI this. This was the break in the case. Now the FBI knew who they were looking for. They began a nationwide search for Timothy McVeigh. They entered his name and details into law enforcement computer systems. A check soon revealed that a man named Timothy McVeigh had been arrested in Perry, Oklahoma, just hours after the bombing for driving without a license plate and carrying a concealed weapon. He was still in the county jail there. On April 21, 1995, just 3 days after the bombing, FBI agents arrived at the Noble County Jail. They confirmed the man in custody was Timothy McVeigh. He was immediately charged with the bombing. The investigation expanded rapidly. Agents searched storage lockers and homes connected to McVeigh. They found explosives manuals, bags of fertilizer, and detonators. They also found his accomplice, Terry Nichols, at his home in Kansas. Nichols was arrested. Another accomplice, Michael Fortier, was also found and arrested. Fortier and his wife Lori knew about the plan beforehand, but had not stopped it. Michael Fortier agreed to help the government by testifying against McVeigh and Nichols in exchange for a lighter sentence for himself and immunity for his wife. Timothy McVeigh was charged in federal court with conspiracy to use a weapon of mass destruction, using a weapon of mass destruction, and 8 counts of murder for the deaths of the 8 federal law enforcement officers who died in the building. Because the crime was so emotionally charged in Oklahoma, the judge decided to move the trial to Denver, Colorado, to ensure a fair jury. The trial began in 1997. The government's case was very strong. They presented physical evidence linking McVeigh to the bomb materials and the rental truck. They showed the fake ID he used. They had witnesses from the motel and the rental shop. His friend, Michael Fortier, testified against him, telling the jury how McVeigh had planned the bombing and shown him the building. McVeigh's defense lawyers did not try to claim he was innocent. Instead, they argued that the government itself was to blame for actions at Waco and Ruby Ridge that had driven McVeigh to violence. The jury did not accept this argument. On June 2, 1997, the jury found Timothy McVeigh guilty on all counts. Later, the same jury decided his punishment. They recommended the death penalty. The judge agreed and formally sentenced him to death by lethal injection. Terry Nichols was also tried. He was found guilty of conspiracy and involuntary manslaughter for the deaths of the 8 federal officers. He was not given the death penalty, but was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of release. Michael Fortier was sentenced to 12 years in prison for failing to warn authorities and for other crimes. He was released early for good behavior and entered the Witness Protection Program. McVeigh was sent to a federal supermax prison in Colorado. He later dropped all his appeals. He said he preferred execution to life in prison. His execution was scheduled for June 11, 2001, at a federal prison in Terre Haute, Indiana. It was the first federal execution in the United States since 1963. On the morning of the execution, McVeigh did not make a final spoken statement. He had previously written a copy of a poem called Invictus as his final words. He was executed by lethal injection at 7:14 a.m. His body was cremated, and the ashes were given to his lawyer. The location of his ashes was never disclosed. In Oklahoma City, the site of the Murrah building was cleared. A memorial and museum were built there to honor the 168 people who were killed. The memorial includes a field of empty chairs, one for each victim, with smaller chairs for the 19 children. The story of the bombing, the investigation, and the punishment of those responsible is now a part of American history. The case was closed and justice was served.